What's up, folks? I'm JC Owens. This is Rockmyworld, episode 40, The Dragonslayer Returns. Now, we've talked about the nature of human history being somewhat of a big circle with wibbly edges. As the modern era came in, the progressive mindset kind of took over and became the most predominant one in Western culture, and soon after the world, this idea that humanity started in caves and, banging things with rocks, and then we've just progressively been on an ever upwards trajectory towards, you know, apotheosis, becoming our own gods, whatever you want to say. Now, this is a very new thing as far as recorded history goes. For most of history, like people viewed things like I do as this big circle, right? As things rise and fall, just like empires rise and fall, just like the weather, has its cycles. So too does all of human civilization as a whole. Like, we seem to be on. If you read the accounts of the ancients, the basic understanding they had was that humanity keeps starting over. Cataclysms and human mistakes, etc., war, they collapse these giant mega civilizations and we have to start over. And then we slowly build ourselves back up and then we collapse it again through our own fallen nature and bad tendencies, as well as, like I said, random climate changing and, droughts and all these different things, right? Now, the part of this cycle is going to be this periodic rise of a great evil, and then the hero that rises, or heroes that rise to fight it. These things are inextricably linked together. I'm sure most of you have heard that saying, strong men create good times create weak men create bad times, and so the cycle goes on. Well, it's kind of the same idea, right? Without the great evil rising, there is no need for these great heroes. They kind of fade into the background. They just become regular people and do their due. And as long as things are good, then things are good. There's no reason for them to, put on that armor and go to battle, so to speak. But it's when in these times of a great evil, the dragon, if you will, that's when the heroes start to come out of the woodwork, right? Because now they're needed. And, history has seen this happen over and over and over again. Now, given in this modern era, it's kind of been engineered where you've been given a great evil to fight. In times past, you would have things like the Huns attacking your village or something, right? But that's pretty clear line in the sand. Like, innocent people are being, raped and pillaged for, self, aggrandizement and, profit and all these kinds of things. That's pretty clearly bad. That's morally bad to do that. It means like it's pretty clearly morally good to fight against that. Right? Very simple kind of thing. Like you're rising up to defend your village from the invader who's coming to kill you and your family. Pretty simple and clear. In the modern era, they've kind of grabbed hold of this, harnessed it for their own purposes, and that's where you get things like the World War II era Germans, for example. The same people who are, or the same organizations, I should say, that were behind that are behind the wars that we are seeing today. It's just their descendants, their apprentices that have taken over. For the past 150 years, it's been the same thing, where they've been presenting us with these boogeymen, like, like they'll paint Iran as the great evil, right? Or they'll paint China as the great evil, or they'll paint Russia as the great evil. They use this to manipulate humanity because this is a very real cycle that happens naturally. They, just like everything else in the natural world, human beings who are aware of it and understand it can then harness it and use it to manipulate the population. Now, in doing so, they have actually created an actual great evil for all of us to fight, and that would be this global technocracy I keep talking about. But at the same time, without the global technocracy itself being as far-reaching and as powerful as it is and will be, you wouldn't have the great heroes on the horizon that are coming. And I promise you, they will come because they always do. Just regular people will stand up to fight this thing. It is our duty to fight it. It's our time. Some generations get to, sit back on their laurels and not worry about it, whereas other generations have to be on their toes and be the ones to deal with it. We just happen to be the ones in the cycle that get to deal with it this go around. Right? This has happened before. If you read the accounts of Atlantis, it's made pretty clear that the Atlanteans, after becoming corrupted, decided that they were going to march out and conquer the entire world. And it said that it was the Greeks in that era, or the ancestors of the Greeks, rather, the ancestors of the Hellenes, who stood up and actually fought them back and kept them from taking over the whole world. Right? And when I say great evil, these are the kinds of great evils I mean. The ones that are so clearly wrong. Right? Everything, from the Bible backward tells us that, these empires that try to stretch and across the whole globe and domineer over everyone, yeah, they're the bad guys. These enormous empires, are endless consumers that are never satiated. That's the thing about empires, is that they can't, sustain themselves. And once a nation starts empire building, they start a process that already has their collapse built in. At a certain point, the empire will overexpand, it will overstretch itself, and then it will collapse. This is also a natural cycle that the elites have taken control of. They use this to collapse governments and replace them all the time. It's a fairly common part of modern geopolitics and warfare. It's used on, a prolific basis all across the world. This is where we get our color revolutions and regime change. It's, again, harnessing these natural cycles for your own benefit. And what is the, most basic definition of magic? Well, the most basic definition of magic is harnessing nature to accomplish, what it is your will to accomplish, right? Bending nature to your will to make it serve you. Well, that's kind of what the elites do, isn't it? It's kind of like what a lot of us do, really. We do things as humans all the time that, harnesses nature and then bends it to our will in order to accomplish a goal. It's the basis of most of our modern science and everything else. If we take natural processes, we figure them out, and then we use them for our own purposes. Well, this was one of the classical definitions of what magic is. Remember back to me talking about Sir Francis Bacon and his associates back then, how they wanted to separate magic and, hard science, the mystical ritual side and the physical experimental side. They wanted to take them apart because they knew that, since Christianity had taken over, that regular people would never go for it as long as the ritualistic side was still in there, and they removed it, right? I am proposing, though, that we need to harness these ourselves and, be aware of them and actually use them to fight back. These are natural cycles that, we probably can't stop. So we might as well, try to use them to do the right thing and to stop these people from taking over everything. It is such now that global technocracy has so much power that even if all of our governments collapse tomorrow, even if everything that we know collapsed as far as our power structure, the global technocracy would still be there. It would still be there. It's not going anywhere. They would just take over and, keep on rolling. That's how bad this has gotten. You know, people are still having these arguments, you know, about things that are way past being a problem, because like now we have bigger problems, you see. It's like, yeah, it's obviously we shouldn't be spending American tax dollars on fighting these foreign wars and all this kind of stuff, but at this point, that's you know, it's went far beyond us being able to vote and protest our way out of this stuff. It's not going to change a single thing. None of these like proposals that I've heard from our government officials will stop anything at all. This march towards global technocracy will keep going. Unfortunately, folks, this time, as it is all throughout history in this great big circle that we keep going round and round, like the great evil has to be fought by the people. It always has to be fought by the people. The heroes will have to come from the people. It always happens that way, because usually the great evil is the ruling power structure at the time. That's how it tends to shake out. But either way, folks, we'll leave it there for today. As always, much love and peace out.